Hello, everybody, and welcome to One Question with Pastor Adam. And I am Adam, and I am pastor to believers and to doubters, to unfaithful Christians and faithful atheists. And here we are on this March day. Hope the weather is making you happy wherever you are. Here in Portland, it's rainy and drizzly, and some people dig that, and some people don't. Yeah, I'm not huge into the rain, even though I live in Portland. Yeah, so how about that? So, anyway, hope you are doing well. And today's topic is, you may have heard that empathy is under attack in Christian circles. There are books out there that are saying that empathy is a bad thing. There's a toxic empathy. And I wanted to talk about that with you here today. And as you may know, I think that empathy is a good thing, is generally a good thing. And the Bible shows us that empathy is a good thing, and we should empathize with others. That's one of the biblical principles that cannot be denied, and yet it is being denied in our culture. This is a very dangerous place for us to be in Christianity, and this is serious. And so I want to talk with you about empathy and why it is so serious. But first, I want to bring up a video today from Ali Beth Stuckey, who has written a book called Toxic Empathy. And this is just going to give us kind of a baseline for how empathy is being talked about in these certain Christian circles. So if you have comments, questions as we go along, please put those in the chat section. Princess says, greetings, Pastor Adam and church family. Empathy rocks. And so I think empathy rocks too, Princess. We're going to get to this later, how empathy can be hijacked in ways that these Christians who are warning us about toxic empathy completely miss the point. And so they're they're not even so close. They're hijacking empathy in order to channel and attack vulnerable people. That's what this hijacking of empathy is allowing them to do. And I'm going to get to the other side of that later on. Kenton, hello from Dallas. Always good to see you, Kenton. Tree, good morning. Empathy is a fascinating and complex subject to me. Looking forward to this. Tree, please, would love to read your thoughts, comments about empathy as we move along. But just to lay some foundation for what we're dealing with here, I'm going to bring up a video, and hopefully this will work for us. Yeah, here it is. Let's see. There we go. I think I like that better. So this is about a minute and a half long. It's Ali Beth Stuckey talking about her book, Toxic Empathy. And she has 5 principles of how empathy is, how she thinks that empathy is being used incorrectly. And that in our culture, she will say, is saying that abortion is healthcare. We're going to talk about that. She says that we shouldn't empathize with trans women. We shouldn't say that trans women are women. We're going to talk about that. We shouldn't say love is love. That's apparently toxic empathy. No human is illegal is her 4th principle. And social justice is justice. Those are her 5 principles. So just to kind of set it that before us, those are all elements of toxic empathy according to this. So here we go with the video. This is the introduction to her book, Toxic Empathy.
On October 15th, I'll be releasing Toxic Empathy, How Progressivism Exploits Christian Compassion. Several years ago, I started paying attention to the tactics used by the left-wing media to get people, women in particular, on their side of an issue. They use what I call empathy shaming or empathy bullying. They present a victim, tell you their heart-rending story so that you have empathy for them, then attempt to convince you that the only kind moral position to take is the progressive one. So empathy for the trans child means you allow them to attempt to change their gender. Empathy for the illegal immigrant means you oppose deportation. This is toxic empathy. It is the empathy provoked for the purpose of manipulating you into believing things that are harmful and untrue. The thing about empathy is that it can actually blind us to reality and morality. That's why empathy really isn't a good guide in helping us decide what's right. The truth is, the actual truth, and most importantly, biblical truth. That's why I wrote this book. In it, we go through the 5 most popular lies of progressivism, the compelling story the media tells surrounding these lies, then refute them with counter-narratives, historical and scientific facts, and biblical support. When you've finished Toxic Empathy, you'll feel completely equipped to contend with the complex issues of our day with confidence and compassion. Order Toxic Empathy wherever books are sold. Out October 15th.
Okay, so we don't want to watch that again. Okay. Kenton says, "Trigger warning, Allie Beth Stuckey." I should have led with that. Kenton, thank you for that. I'm sorry that I didn't lead with that. Whenever you're kind of making me think that whenever I talk about or bring up folks who see things very differently than I do, maybe I should always bring up a trigger warning. Kenton, really appreciate you doing that. Tree, yeah, toxic empathy, how progressives exploit Christian compassion. Allie Beth Stuckey says that she wants to deal with these issues compassionately. I hope that she does. I wonder what compassion means for her. What it feels like it is meaning for me is that what I would call a toxic Christianity comes, which is what Allie Beth Stuckey is stuck in, is a form of Christianity that says, we know better than you. We know more about you and your life than you do, and we should have the power to control your life. That's what this is all about. That is not at all what Jesus was about. This kind of Christianity that's talking about toxic empathy is a power grab against other people. It is anti-Christian. It has nothing to do with love. Love is about loving the other person as they are. And if you want to disagree with the humanity of another person, that ain't love. That is not love. So we can have disagreements, but you better not, as a Christian, be disagreeing about the humanity of another person. That's the sin. This gives off, like this kind of Christianity gives off, the opponents of Jesus in the Gospels always come to Jesus and they're like, why are you hanging out with these people? Like these people aren't good enough. These people have made really bad decisions in their lives. Notice that that's the frame that Jesus's opponents take, right? That's Jesus's opponents who lord it over others, who take the position above others, especially vulnerable minority groups, and judge them. That's the opponents of Jesus. So Jesus, on the other hand, is able to empathize with those that the religious elite accuse. That's Christian empathy right there. So hopefully this will make sense to you as we go through the 5 problems with progressive Christianity that Allie Beth Stuckey brings forward. These 5 elements where this kind of Christianity says, we know better than you, and you need to change your life so that it conforms with what we think, right? So the first one is abortion is healthcare. That's for Allie Beth Stuckey, a progressive statement, a progressive Christian statement that she firmly disagrees with. Now, on its surface, abortion is healthcare for many people. Many people, many women who are pregnant, and many trans folk who are pregnant need abortion in order to save their lives. In that sense, abortion is absolutely healthcare for the person who is pregnant. No doubt about it. So on the surface level, the first statement, abortion is healthcare, is a progressive Christian lie. On the surface, that is false. Abortion absolutely is healthcare. Now, when we get to biblical truth about abortion, you may be fascinated to know that as firm and as confident as Allie Beth Stuckey and other folks are about abortion being against the Bible and the Bible, biblical truth being against abortion, you may be interested to know that the Bible never actually talks about abortion, never explicitly talks about abortion. Now, Jesus never talks about abortion. Now, if abortion was a huge, massive problem that these folks are making it out to be, you would think that it shows up somewhere in the Bible, but it doesn't. It absolutely does not, except for possibly in two places. But these two places that are often brought up are not about abortion as we talk about abortion today. Let me start with generally how this conversations go. So generally, somebody, a conservative Christian who's against abortion, will say, clearly laid out in the Bible, you shall not murder, and abortion is murder. Interestingly, many conservative Christians look at the law in this way. There are general laws, the Ten Commandments. These general laws are generally how we should live, right? And then there's a lot in the Bible that is case law. Now, the distinction here is that case law is how those general principles in the Ten Commandments are applied in our lives. If abortion was such a big deal in the Bible, there would be case law about it, but there is no case law about it. There is case law about all kinds of different things, including when it comes to murder, but abortion never shows up. Our Jewish siblings here say that's because abortion is not murder, right? And I think that they have a really great point. That has been a Jewish principle from thousands of years ago. The two places where abortion, something like abortion, shows up in the Bible is in Exodus chapter 21, 22 to 25. This is probably the most important passage when it comes to this. It says this: when people who are fighting injure a pregnant woman so that there is a miscarriage and yet no further harm follows, the one responsible shall be fined what the woman's husband demands, paying as much as the judges determine. If any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and stripe for stripe. That's the case law for thou shalt not murder in this circumstance. And this case law does not treat the loss of a fetus as a human being, as a life. Let me read this again. When people who are fighting, men who are fighting, injure a pregnant woman so that there is a miscarriage and no further harm follows, the one responsible shall be fined what the woman's husband demands. So you have a miscarriage, and there's no further harm, then you shall pay a fine. Then the man shall pay a fine based on what the man's whose wife was harmed shall pay. You're just paying a fine here. It's like a loss of property. It's not a life. This miscarriage is not treated as a life. It's treated as property that you should pay. But if any further harm happens to the woman, like she dies, then life for life. So the woman is treated as a life. The miscarriage is not. This is case law for life, for what happens when you murder, and the fetus is not treated as a life. That's interesting. The closest the case law gets treats a fetus as not a life, but as property. Interesting. The other one that people often refer to is Numbers chapter 5, where you have this strange passage where if a man thinks that his wife is having an affair, that he is to take her to the temple, and the priest is supposed to make a concoction of holy water and dust from the temple floor and have the woman drink it. And if she is guilty, then it says, I think that her uterus will drop, making a miscarriage, is what many people say that the Hebrew is actually saying in this. And if she's innocent, then nothing will happen to her. So this one is a little sketchy when we're talking about abortion, mostly because this is not a woman who is making this decision to go get an abortion. This is a woman who is treated horribly by her husband. This is a very misogynistic text. And it can also be seen as a way where God creates the opportunity for an abortion, for the fetus being taken out of the womb and being miscarried. There's a lot of debate about this passage. Some people that I respect say that it's most likely not about abortion, and that maybe the fetus is born alive, but it's very ambiguous. And so I generally don't like to go to Numbers chapter 5. And then I've got a lot of friends who say, no, this is clearly God producing an abortion. And I tend to fall into that camp, but it's a complicated one. The overall point on this abortion in the Bible is that when the Bible gets closest to talking about abortion in Exodus chapter 21, doesn't treat the fetus as a life, but as property. So when our friends who use the Bible against abortion say that the Bible clearly says this, they're wrong, absolutely wrong. The Bible doesn't clearly say anything about abortion except for this in Exodus chapter 21. Interestingly, you may be interested to know that in the first thousands years of Christianity, there were Christian doctors who performed abortions, and they were not condemned. So I forget the guy's name. Maybe somebody can Google that. But there was a doctor in Europe and did that. So many people who say, oh, Christian tradition is clearly against abortion, they're not right either. So there you go. The second principle that she talks about where progressive empathy gets toxic is trans women are women. Science, this is something that's crucially important as we talk about these issues. Trans women are women, and also love is love. Science is showing us that there is a certain percentage of the human population, a minority variant in being human, that experiences that the gender that they are assigned at birth is not their true gender. And that is proven to be a human experience of a minority group of people. That's true. And guess what? Many conservative Christians will say, well, that may be true according to science, but that's not true according to the Bible. Here again, the Bible says nothing about being trans. The Bible can get close to something like being transgender, right? In the ancient world, the closest that you get are eunuchs, who were seen as something in between male and female. Eunuchs were kind of this gender category that didn't fit the binaries. And in Deuteronomy, it says that the eunuch will never enter into the assembly of the Lord, right? So that is a passage that you could use in order to say eunuchs and people sort of like eunuchs, like our trans siblings, should not enter into the assembly of the Lord. That would be a leap against our trans siblings, because they're not the ancient eunuchs. There's a difference here. So anybody who used that argument would be making a leap in biblical interpretation. Even so, Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, says there will come a day when the eunuch will be welcomed into the house of the Lord as a eunuch. And so you have this arguing within Scripture. Will eunuchs never enter into the assembly of the Lord, or will eunuchs come into the assembly of the Lord, right? This, by the way, should challenge any idea of biblical inerrancy, because the prophet Isaiah argues with the book of Deuteronomy and says, nope, that's not the last word, right? The early Christian community in the book of Acts, Jesus first says that there are some people who become eunuchs for the kingdom of God. Now, this is a transformation of a body, cutting off the penis, cutting off the sexual organs of a man. And so when people say, oh, you shouldn't do that to your body because God made you that way, well, Jesus says, actually, you can do that to your body, and you might be doing that to your body for the betterment of the kingdom of God, which includes your mental health. So a lot of people want to spiritualize this and say Jesus wasn't talking literally. Well, that's a very convenient way of interpreting Jesus to fit your narrative, right? And hey, we all do that. But Jesus doesn't say, hey, I'm talking spiritually here. No, he's talking literally here. There are literally some people who become eunuchs for the betterment of the kingdom of God, right? So that's an interesting take that Jesus makes there that a lot of people want to conveniently ignore. In the book of Acts, there is an Ethiopian eunuch who is supposed to be not allowed fully into the assembly of the Lord, right? He's out traveling with this guy named Philip, one of the disciples of Jesus, and they're talking about the book of Isaiah. And the eunuch is like, hey, I don't understand this. And Philip says, hey, let me tell you about this guy named Jesus, who was the social outcast of the religious elite. The religious elite turned against Jesus and they killed him. And that's what this book of Isaiah is trying to get at. The Ethiopian eunuch is like, wow, that's me. Like, I have been the outcast of religious elite people too. Maybe there's a place for me because Jesus had the same experience. This is where you get the point that I'll talk about a little bit later, where Jesus empathizes with the victims of human culture. Jesus is the one who identifies with those who are on from those who are attacked by the religious and the political elite. That is empathy. And the Ethiopian eunuch understands that Jesus is talking about him, that Jesus is identifying with him. that the law said in Deuteronomy should be excluded, he is included into this group of people, the early Christians, the followers of the way. Why? Because Jesus had the same experience of being the outcast by the religious elite. And so the Ethiopian eunuch looks to Philip and is like, hey, I'm a eunuch, but what's to stop me from being baptized into the people of God? And Philip says, nothing. So let's do it, right? So there is nothing in the Bible that explicitly talks about our trans siblings as we talk about our trans siblings today. The closest that it gets is they should be accepted and they should be included into the realm of God. Now, one of the things that often gets thrown about by Christians who are against trans people is the rate that young people are getting gender affirming surgeries. You may remember from a podcast that Matt Walsh did on the Joe Rogan show, that Joe Rogan was like, Matt Walsh did a documentary about trans people, and Joe Rogan asked him, well, how many people are getting gender affirming surgeries? And Matt Walsh says, oh, it's in the millions. It's got to be in the millions by now. This is also the question was also gender affirming, not only surgeries, but also, healthcare and puberty blockers and things like that. Matt Walsh says, oh, it's got to be in the millions. They fact check him, and it's nowhere close. Here are the stats. The rate of undergoing gender affirming surgery for adults is 5.3 gender affirming surgeries for 100,000 people. 5.3. It is incredibly low. For minors aged 15 to 17, it is 2.1 per 100,000 people. For minors aged 13 to 14, it is 0.1 for 100,000. And for minors 12 or younger, it's 0. So one of the narratives that Matt Walsh and Allie Beth Stuckey like to make is that millions and millions of children, millions and millions of people are having these gender affirming surgeries. Trump, during his campaign, attacked our transgender siblings, saying that children are going to school and during the school hours, they're out getting gender affirming, they're out getting surgeries. And so their parents don't know anything about this. And when they leave, they're like a man, they're like a boy. And when they come back, they're a girl. These are total lies, absolute total lies that are being told. I can't even give my children who are in high school a Tylenol without giving them permission. Are you kidding me? This is crazy. These are the lies that are being told against a minority group that is not causing the downfall of the United States. And certain Christians are acting as if they are. That's scapegoating 101. Love is the third point that Allie Beth Stuckey make. This is attack against our gay and lesbian siblings. Science also tells us that being gay or lesbian is also a true minority variant in being human. It is a true experience. You even see homosexuality in the animal world. This is natural. This is natural in the human experience. Now, again, people will say, well, we should take the Bible over nature, right? biblical truth over whatever science is telling us, whatever. As if in this case the Bible and science have competing truths to tell, right? I've done a lot of podcasts on homosexuality in the Bible, just to give you a summary of that. Invite you to go find those podcasts if you're interested in it. Just to give you a summary of that, the Bible doesn't talk about our transgender siblings in the ways that we talk about our transgender siblings, the Bible also isn't talking about being gay or lesbian in the ways that we talk about it today. The passages in Leviticus are, if you look at the Hebrew, are clearly about a power dynamic. And this happens a lot in the ancient world. Male to male sex is shown as humiliation of another person, or it's shown as temple prostitute worshiping. You see this in the book of Deuteronomy. I think it's chapter 23, somewhere in there. You can Google it. But there are male prostitutes at temples. And this is seen as not good. So men would go to temples of idolatry and have sex with other men, and then they'd go back home to their wives. That's not homosexuality as we talk about it today. In the book of Leviticus, it's clear that from the Hebrew that this is a male who has a higher social status penetrating a male who has a lower social status. This is not homosexual. This is not homosexuality as we understand it today, with mutual love and consent amongst men, a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. One of the things that's important to understand about this as well is that there's a story. I should give you a trigger warning here too, about rape. There are two points in Scripture. One of them is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, which I won't go into about it with you. It's Genesis 19. Maybe it's 20, I can't remember off the top of my head. But Sodom and Gomorrah is not about two men or two women living in a same-sex committed relationship. It's about the men of Sodom wanting to sexually abuse strangers, and when they're done, going back home to their wives. That's not homosexuality as we understand it today. That's abuse. That's rape. There's another incident, I think it's in 1 Samuel, where David is king. It might be in 2 Samuel, where David is king, and one of the neighboring countries has just had a king who died. David and that king were buddies. So there's a new king in this other place. David sends an envoy to say, hey, sorry to hear about your king dying. We're empathizing with you. We're on your side, right? That's the message that David wants to give the new rulers in this kingdom. Well, the rulers in that kingdom, they have advisors saying, hey, David's not on your side. David's actually has toxic empathy, and he's just out here trying to send his spies in order to find out what we're doing. And so what we suggest to you is that you cut off the spies, David's envoy, you cut off their pants so that they are just in the middle of the buttocks. And you also shave half their beard. So one side is bearded on the envoys, and one side is like smooth skin. What's going on here? They are emasculating these men, the envoy. And so the envoy goes back to David. They have to ride their horses or walk through the desert. And you can imagine people who are seeing them laughing at them because their male parts are showing as they're walking through the desert, and they're half-faced, which means they're children, men. They're man children, right? This is an act of shame that this other political leaders are trying to make against David's envoy, but not just against David's envoy, against David himself. See what we can do to your envoy, to your soldiers, right? This is shaming them and shaming David. And as they go, their parts are showing, right? Their butt is showing. They are vulnerable people. And the point is that once they get to David, David doesn't know if they've been raped, if they've been penetrated by other men. They very well could have been. And guess what David's response is? Not, well, we're going to follow Leviticus and kill you, right? But how are we going to care for you? How are we going to empathize with you in this experience, right? David is not out to use religious laws against his envoy because of what may or may not have happened to them. He is to empathize with them and care for them. Love is love. And thank God for that. There is love shown between men in the Bible, David and Jonathan, for example. Now, were they gay partners? We don't know, but there's certainly an intimacy between them. David says that he loved Jonathan more than he ever loved any woman. And so there are hints about this. Some Jewish commentators say that there are massive hints that David and Jonathan had some stuff going on. Right? So the Bible doesn't talk about homosexuality as we talk about it today, not explicitly. So love is love. Thank God for that. No human is illegal. That's another one of these toxic empathy points. And this is the strangest one for me, because in Scripture, it clearly states in Leviticus, I think it's chapter 19, verse 34, says this: "The alien who resides with you shall be to you as the citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." This is the definition of empathy. If you were to look for an example of empathy in the Bible, this is it. And it is the core of the Old Testament. The book of Exodus is the core of the Old Testament. Everything else is commentary. Now, whatever you make of the book of Exodus, I have issues with it. I'm sure that we all have issues with it. But one of the most important things about the book of Exodus is that the Hebrews who are enslaved cry out to God, and God hears their cry and acts on their behalf for their freedom. God hears the cry of the oppressed. What is God doing here? God is empathizing with the slaves. This is God's empathy for those who are the victim of human culture. The Hebrews were a minority group that the Egyptians lived in fear of. They were a minority group that Pharaoh feared might gain more power, might increase in numbers. And so Pharaoh has this irrational fear about these Hebrew people. And he continues to oppress them and tries to oppress them even harder because of his irrational fear of this minority group. Does that sound familiar? Many people today have an irrational fear of our trans siblings, of our gay siblings and lesbian siblings, of undocumented immigrants. Such a minority group, and yet there's this great fear of them. So no human is illegal. The alien who resides with you shall be to you as the citizen among you. Imagine if Christians throughout the United States actually lived out that principle. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. Remember that you, and this is like a generation after the Exodus. So when it says, remember that you were aliens in the land of Egypt, that's not literally true. The people that this is this is written for and afterwards, this uh, this is in the book of Leviticus, and so this may have been told to the people who were leaving Egypt, but this is also told to people to today. You were not literally aliens in the land of Egypt, but spiritually, we have all been aliens in the land of Egypt. And so, even on the spiritual level, we are supposed to identify with aliens in our land, with immigrants, documented or undocumented, in our land. We are supposed to empathize with them. Now, when it comes to undocumented immigrants, what people on the right are also trying to do is to tell us that they are all criminals out to get us. They're trying to get us to live in fear of this minority group. Just like the Pharaoh wanted his people to fear the Hebrews, we're being told the same lies today about our undocumented siblings. In fact, if there's any group that you should fear the most, it is white native born men. It's the native born that you should fear the most, who on percentage wise commit more crimes than our undocumented siblings. You know, our undocumented folk, by and large, keep their heads down. They don't want to be found out. They work hard, and they're just trying to get by. Interestingly enough, the scapegoating of our undocumented siblings works in many ways, including this way. Did you know that in order to build Trump Tower, Donald Trump hired undocumented immigrants? And did you know he didn't pay them? How about that? Did you also know that he hired undocumented immigrants to work at his golf courses and his hotels? This is how I'm going to get to what toxic empathy actually is in a little bit, but this is how the powerful are able to use laws to their advantage in order to take advantage of vulnerable minority groups. Right? If we really cared about undocumented immigrants being in the United States, you know what they would do? They would go after businesses that hire undocumented immigrants. But guess what? They're not going to do that. Why? Because undocumented immigrants are such an easy target for them to scapegoat. If they really cared, they would be going after powerful business owners, rich business owners like Donald Trump. But nope. We're gonna take the easy target. That's bullying, and that's toxic. That's what's toxic. So finally, she says, Allie Beth Stuckey says, social justice is justice. That's a progressive, toxic empathy principle. Social justice is justice, and she wants to use the Bible to show that the truth that social justice is not justice. I don't know how she defines social justice. For me and for the Bible, social justice is primarily justice in the Bible. I should put it this way: justice in the Bible is primarily about caring for the poor, the widows, the orphans, the aliens, the vulnerable people in our midst. That's what justice is in the Bible, and that's what we mean today by social justice. Now, the prophets are very keen on this. Whenever kings arise and they forget or refuse to take care of the poor, the widows, the orphans, the aliens in their midst, whenever they ignore them and gain more power and more wealth for themselves, the prophets rise up and say, you're not living out God's divine mandate for you, for political leadership. Take a look at Isaiah chapter 10, verses 1 through 4. Isaiah rises up against the king of the time and says, "Ah, you who make iniquitous decrees, who write oppressive statutes, to turn aside the needy from justice, and to rob the poor of my people of their right, that widows may be your spoil, and that you make the orphans your prey." These are harsh words that Isaiah gives the political leaders of his day. And why does he give these harsh words? Because he knows that God is not a God of oppression, but God is a God who seeks to set the oppressed free. You who write oppressive statutes to turn aside the needy from justice. Who is the needy? The poor, the oppressed. What is justice for them? To care for their needs. That's what the political leaders are supposed to be about in the Bible. To rob the poor people of their right. What is the right of poor people? It's to be cared for. It's to have enough. Here, related to this is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 15, verses 7 through 11. Now, a lot of people say that this passage is primarily about charity and not about how we live our lives together in a political way. But the book of Deuteronomy is all about how the people, Israel, are supposed to live together. This is a political system, how you are supposed to structure your lives together. Deuteronomy 15, 7 through 11 says this: "If there is among you anyone in need," this is where Isaiah says that the political leaders are turning aside the needy from justice. Justice is making sure that those needs are met. That's biblical justice. So Deuteronomy says, if there is among you anyone in need, a member of your community in any of your towns within the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted towards your needy neighbor. You should rather open your hand willingly, lending enough to meet the need, whatever it may be. Be careful that you do not entertain a mean thought, thinking, the seventh year, the year of remission, is near, and therefore view your needy neighbor with hostility and give nothing. Your neighbor might cry out to the Lord against you, and you would incur guilt. Not following Isaiah in the ways of caring for the needy among us, not structuring our lives so that our politicians set up a society where the needy among us are cared for. Deuteronomy says that incurs guilt upon us as a people. I mean, the guilt that you may be feeling about how our politics are structuring ourselves, current political leaders are structuring ourselves against our trans siblings, against the poor, the way that they are, taking jobs away from military veterans and others in order to give tax breaks to the extremely wealthy. I'm not responsible for that, but I have a sense of guilt that this is what my country has come to, and that guilt damn well better make us work for something different, for more of what I see as this vision from Isaiah and Deuteronomy, where all people are cared for. Now, I get that from the Bible, from religion. That's also a very humanistic, you don't need the Bible or religion in order to get there. It's very humanistic to care for and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. I don't care how you get to that point. I just care that you get to that point, that we get to that point as a society. Social justice is also found in Luke chapter 4, where Jesus says his mission statement is, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Now, a move that many conservatives make is to spiritualize this, to overly spiritualize this, to say that the good news to the poor is, hey, when you die, you're going to go to heaven, right? That's not how Jesus treated the poor. Jesus treated the poor by feeding them, by meeting their needs, right? Producing miracles where the hungry are fed. He also gave healthcare to anyone in need. Read the end of Luke chapter 4, where people bring their sick friends, their sick family members to Jesus, and it says that he cures every one of them, right? That's what social justice is all about. That's what Jesus lives into. Jesus also has some harsh words for King Herod, right? He calls Herod a fox, which is an unclean animal, and also the king of Israel is supposed to be a lion. So Jesus here is speaking some pretty political, some trash talking when it comes to the political leaders of his day. And Jesus says, go tell Herod that fox that I'm out here healing people and caring for people, doing what the king is supposed to be doing, right? That's what social justice is all about. And the linchpin for this for me is Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46, where Jesus says to the people on what appears to be a judgment day, he says that I was hungry and you gave me food, thirsty and you gave me something to drink, stranger and you welcomed me, naked and you gave me clothing, sick and you took care of me, in prison and you visited me. Now, the judgment here is not merely about individuals, it's the nations that are being brought before Jesus. That's how the story begins. The nations is code word, not really even code word. The nations are political systems. The nations, the United States, one day will be, according to this, brought before Jesus. The Roman Empire, brought before Jesus. And if we, as a political system, as a people, feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, welcome the stranger, care for the naked, care for the sick, visit people in prison, we do that to Jesus. That's empathy. That's Jesus empathizing with the victims of human culture. And it's also Jesus is inviting us to empathize with the victims of human culture, to see that Jesus is in them, right? And what we do to the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the naked, the sick, those in prison, is what we do to Jesus. If that's not a form of empathy, I don't know what is. This whole love your neighbor as yourself, that's empathy. On one level, love your neighbor as yourself can mean love your neighbor as yourself, as you love yourself. But it can also mean love your neighbor because in your neighbor you see yourself. In your neighbor is yourself because you are part of this human community. We're all human together. That's empathy. That is a call to empathy. Now, I've said that there are some forms of empathy that can be dangerous. And I'll give you one example from the 20th century. This, I'm not going to worry about this example because this is an extreme example that makes the point. In Nazi Germany, there were all kinds of problems before the Nazis arose, right? Real problems, economic problems, right? We have economic problems today. We've had economic problems for a while. Capitalism, unfettered capitalism, has run amok, has made it so the rich are extremely rich and the rest of us are not, right? Similar problems in Germany during that time. Hitler rose by trying to empathize with white Germans, white Christian Germans who were having a really hard time. His empathy for them was toxic because instead of pointing out the real problems of the day, he blamed our Jewish siblings. He scapegoated our Jewish siblings. So this is where toxic empathy can actually happen. Hitler empathizes with a certain group of people, and in empathizing with them, he makes a vulnerable minority group the target of their hatred, of their anger, of their economic oppression. This is where political leaders can empathize with one group of people at the expense of another. And that's where we're at today in the United States. And the ways that Christians in Germany fell for it with Hitler is the same way that Christians in the United States are falling for it today. Our transgender, when Allie Beth Stuckey focuses on vulnerable minority groups like our transgender siblings, undocumented immigrants, when she focuses on abortion and social justice, when she focuses on minority groups of people, she's falling into that trap because those people are not the problems that we have today. The problems that we have today are this extreme inequality of wealth. The problem that we have today is the tendency of human scapegoating. The problem that we have today is when politicians try to blame, and Christians following them try to blame minority groups of people. They're uniting together, giving the lie that to white people, sometimes white poor people, that our biggest problems are these minority groups. It's a lie. It has nothing to do with biblical truth. It goes against biblical truth, which over and over again, especially in Jesus, says empathy is good and you need to empathize with victims of human culture. Now, another trick on this is where Hitler tried to make himself into the victim. And with being the victim in that sense, Hitler gained power. You see it today with our political leaders today. They are constantly trying to claim victim status in order to use their victim status to attack actual victims, actual minority groups who are powerless, who don't have the power that they do, right? This, you see it with our political leaders today. I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, oh, you saw Mac. Yes, Mac is here. Mac the dog is in the background. So okay, so that's the gist of what I got, and love to read your comments. So we will see. Did I get what do you think? What do you think? Oh, my sister's on. Hillary, I love you too. Melanie, hello. Let's see. Heather, good to see you. Melanie says this is almost comical if it wasn't so horrific and dangerous. Yeah. I'm either you laugh or you cry. There's got to be something in between that. I don't want to laugh. I want to cry, but I also don't want to get stuck in this place. There's work to do, and part of it is sifting through the lies, pointing out the lies. Whenever the lie is a lot of what I'm telling you, Kenton knows is based off of Rene Girard and mimetic theory. What Girard stated was that the lie of human culture is sacrificing another person, often religious sacrificing of another person. It is blaming a minority group or an individual for all of the problems in our culture. And religious sacrifice gets caught up in this. That's how religious sacrifice forms, according to Girard. And it's based on a lie. It is based on the word Satan in the Bible. You can see this in the book of Job, which often gets translated as accuser. The word Satan means accuser. And so when we accuse, especially when we accuse a minority group of people, an individual for all of the problems in our world, in our culture, we're caught up in the satanic mechanism of sacrifice. That is the lie. Now, this is not to say that any of us are perfect, right? I don't want to like give the impression that everybody in a minority group is absolutely perfect and has never done anything wrong, right? That's not true about being human. But the minority group as a whole is being blamed for all of our problems. That is the lie. That is the lie that the Bible reveals to be a lie, and that Jesus ultimately reveals to be a lie in this world. Check out some stuff by Girard. I don't agree with everything Girard says, but on this point, that's good. Dina says, yes. Dina says, the Bible's words are more important than the message. Yeah. Tree says, their empathy feels like it comes down to judging others and then inflicting consequences on them for those judgments. Yeah. I mean, that's tragic. Unfortunately, that's a lot of it. And you know, there's a part of me that like is aware of my tendency to scapegoat people that I disagree with, but there is a difference between scapegoating and holding people accountable, right? And I think this is it, Tree. The people that, and I know you believe this too, the people that we disagree with are human, right? And when the scripture says there should be no one needy among you, this includes them. When Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself, he's including the people that we disagree with. Even Jesus says, this includes your enemies. Damn it, Jesus, why do you got to say that, right? But that I think is like all-star level empathy. Damn, that's hard, right? When you're able to empathize with even people that we think are doing, even with people who are doing very destructive things. We can empathize with them. We can understand their past. You know, Trump had a very difficult childhood with a father who was constantly judging him. I can empathize with that and be like, that's really hard. And at the same time, I can say, yeah, and we need to put boundaries around you. We need to hold you accountable to these horrible things that you're doing, including going against the Constitution, right? Like, it used to be that people on the right accuse those of us on the left of being against the Constitution. Well, when you start going against the Constitution with not giving people due process and coming up with some alien enemies act when that should only be used when we're at war and hasn't been used since World War II, and even in World War II was used against our Japanese siblings in horrific ways, right? That should get our radar up. So, oh boy. Let's see. Yeah, Dina, Judaism has 7 different recognized genders. Yeah. And that's going back to the Mishnah, which goes back to 2,000 years and beyond. So in Judaism, there's a recognition that there are multiple genders. And we know today that there are some folks who are born with male and female organs, right? Intersex siblings. So this whole like there's only 2 genders, male and female, erases not only our trans siblings, but also our intersex siblings. And it's based on a lie. Yes, Melanie, intersex. Thank you for bringing that up. Melanie says there are plenty of trans and gay animals in the animal kingdom. Wow, that's good. Tanya says, was thinking of this in my snails, or are snails an example of that? That's interesting. Tree says, I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something that makes the point that we take God's wheat and make bread, and God's grapes and make wine, and so too is honoring them to positivity, transforming ourselves. Tree, you are awesome. Thank you for bringing this up. Before I started, I made a mental note to bring this about. And so thank you, Tree, for bringing this up. In the book of Genesis, there are two creation stories. When God creates the trees, the fish, the humans, things that grow, God creates them, and then God steps back and says, basically gives the responsibility of growth to the natural world. And so humans, the natural world, is to grow. And part of that growth is transformation, can be transformation. And that's the freedom that God gives the natural world. Grapes being turned into wine. Beautiful example. Wheat being made into bread. Great example. That's part of the freedom of transformation that God gives into the world. Caterpillar into a butterfly, right? There's beauty in this. Just like there is beauty in a human being being transformed into who they were fully meant to be without people judging them, right? This is the journey of our transgender siblings, the freedom that God gives to be on this journey. So thank you for that, Tree. Love it. Dina says it's a minority of a minority. Yes, to make, I'm not exactly sure what the it's is that you are referring to, Dina, but we could be talking, it could be any of the categories of human that I have been bringing up. Our transgender siblings are a minority of a minority. And so to focus on them is cowardly, it's bullying, it's, the other thing that they say is make this lie that our transgender siblings are a threat to our children. You know who's a threat to our children? Like, why is his name escaping me? The guy that Trump wanted to, who was in Congress and everybody hated him, and Trump wanted to elevate him to cabinet member, and he ended up, it came out that he was at parties and having sex with minors and stuff. Their accusations tend to be admissions, right? It's always, the accusation is often to hide something about ourselves. Yeah, Cliff, David and Jonathan made a covenant to each other in the eyes of David. Yeah, a covenant based around love. Yeah, Cliff, thank you for that. It's a fascinating story, David and Jonathan. So yeah, Melanie says they don't like immigrants because they believe in the white replacement theory, and white people want other races to remain inferior to them. God, the white replacement, the replacement theory, yeah. Princess says, I find it interesting that some of the Republicans in the world want to spread hate and expect to be loved by others and God. They too wake up. They need to wake the F up. Love is what my God wants us to do. It's that simple. Yeah. I don't, I wonder, I wonder if certain people, like how I mentioned about Trump, like we can empathize with his past, where it seems as though his father was incredibly judgmental, didn't love him the way that he needed to be loved, right? I wonder if that's a lot of this. I wonder if like it's so difficult for some of us people to accept and embrace God's love because we haven't experienced it on the human level. And that may be the only level, not only, I don't want to go that extreme, but the most real, the most tangible love of God is when humans share it with one another. That's why Jesus says, that's why Jesus combines the two most important commandments, which are to love God and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. When Jesus says, love God, the most important commandment is to love God, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. He's not putting a hierarchy of love here. He's not saying like the most important commandment is to love God, and underneath that is to love your neighbor. No, a better way of understanding it is the most important commandment is to love God. And the way that you love God, how you love God, is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. The second is like it. The second is like it in that they're essentially the same. To love God, you got to love your neighbor as yourself. That's what that commandment is getting at. I often thought of it as, okay, yeah, my first job is to love God. And then my second job, maybe it's like really far under there because loving God is like way up here. So loving my neighbors down here. No, that's not it. They are the same. they are like each other, and that the way that you love God is how you love your neighbor, is loving your neighbor as we love ourselves. And yeah, maybe certain folks have not experienced that love, and so they don't know what love is. That's where you get love as controlling another person, as thinking that you know better and that they need to live out how you think they should live out, right? That's controlling. That's not love. Melanie says now they're calling all immigrants criminals because it's a criminal offense to enter our country immediately when it's not even a criminal crime. Yeah, I'm noticing that tendency too, Melanie. It reminds me of the other horrible thing that has been happening, to call all Palestinians Hamas, right? If you're a Palestinian, you're Hamas. Here in the United States, if you empathize with Palestinians, well, you're empathizing with Hamas, right? If you're empathizing with undocumented immigrants, you're empathizing with a criminal, and how dare you, right? These are all strategies that oppressors use in order to justify oppression of a minority group. It is a lie, and it goes against the Bible. It goes against Christ. Dina says the rich white woman. It's interesting. Yeah. Melanie, give drink to the thirsty. You can't even give water to voters in Georgia. Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, that's one of the ways in which, remember when Trump said, vote for me and you'll never have to vote again. Voter suppression, right? That's one of the ways of voter suppression. And you're naming it there. Melanie. Thank you for that. There is also this group, I forget their name, but they leave jugs of water out for undocumented immigrants when they're in the desert, and folks go around kicking them down, emptying the jugs of water. There are certain people who are caring for human life. If we think that all life is sacred, they should be getting water, right? But no, only certain lives are sacred. Undocumented immigrants are not sacred, according to them, right? So that's how they're being treated. Yeah, thank you for that, Melanie. Dina, as you do to the least of these, so you do to me. That's Jesus empathizing with the victims of human culture. Notice how Jesus, when he has his harshest words, uses them for the religious elite who use religion to attack vulnerable people. Check out Matthew chapter 23, where Jesus calls religious folk who use religion in that way a brood of vipers. Just constantly, brood of vipers, just constantly trying to bite. In this case, vulnerable minority groups of people. Tree, toxic empathy isn't for everyone because it's when you only have empathy for some at the expense of others. That's right. That's right. I think that is it. That is it. And that's the danger of being human. I really struggle with the whole commandment to love your neighbor as you love yourself, because some of my neighbors I don't really like. I don't want to have empathy for them. But true empathy, I think that's true empathy, is to empathize with even those that we don't like. That doesn't mean we let them get away with certain things, with behaviors, right? It's like we say here at the church, everyone is welcome, but not every behavior is welcome, right? There has to be some boundaries put up, for sure. Dash, good to see you. Melanie, it's funny when people blame minority groups. They're the minority. How are they having a bigger effect on our lives than the majority? Yeah. And there's something to, like, sometimes the minority group can have a lot of power, like billionaires, right? Can have a lot of. Elon Musk is in a minority class, but his minority class is the class that has all the power and has the ability to scapegoat vulnerable minority groups. Yeah. Dash, good to see you. Cliff, giving a shout out to my sister Hillary. Awesome. Yeah. How do they? Yeah. Our trans siblings, our undocumented immigrant siblings, Melanie, how do they have that kind of power as minorities? That's just the scapegoating that we see throughout human history. Dash, good evening to you, my friend. Good evening. Kenton, the religious leaders focused on marginalized communities like the blind and the lepers. God had supposedly designed them that way, and Jesus dared to change, heal. Oh, Kenton, I love it. This is that John 9? John 8, John 9, somewhere in there, where folks bring the man born blind to Jesus, and they're like, who sinned, this man or his parents, that made him blind? So they have a frame that sin caused this blindness in this person, right? Jesus doesn't play that game. He says, neither. This happened so that I can show you the power of God. We may have some issues with that framing as well. But what is the power of God? It is not to accuse of sin. it is not to it is not to refuse to heal someone because they may have sinned or their parents may have sinned, right? Jesus doesn't play that blame game. What does he do instead? He just heals. That's the power of God. That's what that story is meant to show us. That God isn't in the accusation game. God, the ultimate power for many people, is the ultimate scapegoater. And God is on our side. God empathizes with us and not with our enemies. And so our enemies get to spend eternity in hell. That's not God. That's the satanic mechanism of accusation. For Jesus, the power of God is not caught up in accusations or blaming. It's caught up in healing. That's what God is like. Tree says, you've got to get over life and laugh at it because otherwise it's so hard. Joan Rivers, nicely done. Tanya, claiming victim and reversing the narrative to control is pure evil. Yep, that's the scapegoating mechanism. That's what the oppressors do. Pure evil, that's what Hitler did. Yeah, yep. Tree, having Jesus level empathy for difficult people feels like a North Star for navigation. I know I'll never reach it, but as long as I do my best to move in that direction, I'm on a just path. Tree, I love it. Thank you. Dash, how many do the Native American Indians have? Let's see, I'm not sure where you're going with that, Dash, but this is another, maybe you're going here with it, like the accusation of undocumented immigrants coming into the land illegally is the exact same thing that we did at the founding of this country. White folk coming in, stealing land from people who were already here, manifest destiny, all based on religion, religious lies that justify murdering, killing, taking land from other people. That's something that the United States, Americans, white Americans should repent of, just as the enslavement of our Black siblings. And that history is being threatened. Teaching that history is being threatened in schools. That's another thing that the oppressors do. That's the whole, like, taking away the American education system. Hitler did that, by the way. It's propaganda. Matt Gaetz, thank you, Dash. Why? Thank you. That's the name. Yes. Okay, we've got it. Yes. Thank you. Dash says David was such a romantic with poems and music. It's good. Suni, good to see you. Kenton says David was a lover and a fighter. That's awesome. I love you people. Tree, I could see his face but couldn't remember his name. Yes, thank you for bringing that name. At first, I thought he was talking about Tate till he mentioned the cabinet member. Yeah, Andrew Tate is another one. I remember hearing the story, but Andrew Tate was being investigated in what country? In Europe, and needed to stay there, home arrest, I think, as the investigation was happening. And Andrew Tate supported Trump. So what did Trump do? Oh, you need to bring this womanizer, this abuser, this sex trafficker, Andrew Tate, back to the United States so that he can live in freedom. That's a much better example than what I mean, both are horrific examples, Matt Gaetz and Andrew Tate, of what we're talking about here. But yeah, if there was really a concern about pedophiles, if there was really a concern about sex trafficking, conservatives would be all up in arms about the decision to bring Andrew Tate back to the United States so that he could escape what was happening to him. Sick, just sick. Can you imagine if a Democratic president did something like that? conservatives would be all up in arms, and I would be joining them. I know you would be too. Melanie, it's because the minority rich people have all the resources. That's right. That's right. Yep. Yep. Oh, Native Americans have 5 genders. That's what you were getting at, Dash. I did not know that. Two-spirited, right? That's the one that Native Americans and indigenous populations. That's the one that comes up. But 5, fast. I have so much to learn. Thank you, Dash. Princess, thank you for this very thought-provoking chat. You're welcome. Romania, that's where Andrew Tate was being held. Thank you. Thank you. Friends, thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. I am, just on a personal level, I mentioned many months ago in January that I had this, I lost my second job, which has been really hard on multiple levels for me to deal with, and has taken a lot of my mental energy. Please know that I'm not, as we've been talking about, claiming to be victims. I'm not claiming to be a victim by this. Life happens, and I'm adjusting, and that means that I have not been posting on my website. I have not been posting on my podcast. I'm trying to get back in the swing of things. A couple months ago, I did a podcast for how Adam got his groove back, and getting my groove back has proven to be a process that I am still going through. But part of how I get my groove back is all of you and this church, and I'm grateful for all of you. And if you are listening on the podcast, hopefully I've gotten this up soon and previous podcasts up. Anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you everybody for your comments and for being here. I love you all, and hope you have a great rest of the day. So until we do this again, may God be with you.